I want to get more first on a quite mad story that LBC has revealed today in relation to Scotland. Police Scotland have announced that they will change their vetting processes after LBC exposed concerns about one of their social media adverts. The advert in question featured an actor who regularly appears in explicit content on platforms like OnlyFans, which appeared to be completely at odds with the message being shared. Our correspondent Alan Zazinski has this exclusive.
What's happened here is that the force has hired an actor called Ross to front one of their campaign videos about domestic abuse. Ross, though, is also an OnlyFans creator, and he appears in lots of videos online which are not just explicit, but they involve more violent acts like choking and slapping as well. People have recognised him in this Police Scotland ad since it was uploaded. They've complained to us saying this seems misguided. We've then put that to the force, and the video has now been taken down. But even then, campaigners are alarmed at the fact that nobody in Police Scotland's vetting operation was able to flag this beforehand, especially given the fact that Ross was not trying to hide his other work. It's posted under his name on public social media accounts that have tens of thousands of followers.
You click on my name, and it is immediately apparent what I do. And you can go onto my Twitter, you can go onto my TikTok, it's all there. All advertise my OnlyFans. And it's in great big white bold letters, so you cannot miss it. So whoever carried out the vetting process didn't do it properly in the slightest.
And what words would you use to describe Police Scotland's vetting process?
Thinking unacceptable, but I'll probably think of something quite... inadequate, definitely inadequate.
And the question some campaigners are asking is, what does this say about how strict Police Scotland's vetting might be across other aspects of the force, recruitment, for example? But since we publicised the story, the force has announced that they are going to be strengthening their checks relating to campaigns going forward. They've sent me a statement which reads an additional level of vetting will be brought in. They also say that different levels of vetting are available to us and are always used proportionately for the role or the service being provided.
Let's talk more about this crazy story with Susan Smith, co-director of For Women Scotland. Susan, good to have you with us tonight. Let's start, shall we, with that decision by Police Scotland to recruit this OnlyFans creator as part of a campaign against, supposedly, domestic abuse. What do you make of that decision?
Well, I think it's the latest in a litany of rather embarrassing decisions made in Scotland. And it's a pretty shameful one, because the police are supposed to be acutely aware of the sort of things that can accelerate to extreme violence. And we know from work that women's groups and organisations have been doing that pornography is having a very damaging effect on young people, and especially things that involve strangulation, which I understand this young man was indulging in quite a lot. We know that 30% of young women, for example, have said that they've been subjected to violence during sex. And this is really because it's been normalised. And especially as young men who are seeing some of these examples think that it's sexy or something to aspire to or a part of normal relationships. And we really want to get the message out that it isn't. So when you promote someone who has this sort of extreme content, you're giving a bit of an official sanction to it. Coming from the police, that's especially appalling when we are trying to get them, frankly, to take these sort of abuses during relationships seriously.
Susan, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I struggle to understand how that decision gets made and signed off, presumably by multiple people within Police Scotland. I mean, something's quite wrong. Something's potentially broken for this to have been allowed to happen in the first place, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, I think actually the young man himself had a point, because he said that, well, it wasn't up to him to do the due diligence. It was Police Scotland.
Absolutely.
And he's not hiding what he does. It's all out there on his Twitter feed. He's got links on everything, headline links to his various pornography accounts. So it's only a really, really basic check. And it's even more frightening that this is the police, because we rely on the police to investigate things. And apparently the police officers in this instance couldn't even do a basic Google search.
And women will be coming forward asking those same officers or the people they work with to investigate the fact that they've been potentially choked or assaulted by a partner during sex. And those officers are sort of using it as an advertising campaign. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
It really is. And, you know, I know that this campaign was targeted largely at gay men, but I don't think that makes it any better, because harming people during sex, whether they're straight or gay, is a problem. And it suggests that the police don't think it is that big a deal. And it really, really is a big deal. So as you say, women who are going to the police hoping to be taken seriously will be worried that actually someone in the police force had decided that this was a perfectly acceptable person to front
multiple people.
And that what he did was okay.
Yeah. It's really disturbing. Susan, let's just talk about the broader issue. I mean, it's serious stuff. It's really, really important what you're talking about how boys, young men are learning about what sex is or what they think sex ought to be from what is actually often extreme, graphic, often quite violent porn videos that they're seeing online. How do we counteract that? How do we combat that? And is it a sign that actually what's being taught in schools is somehow lacking because they're getting their knowledge from elsewhere instead?
I think it is, sadly. I think we need a sort of multidisciplinary approach to this, because obviously they can access pornography very, very easily now. It's not getting a magazine off the top shelf and hiding it under your bed anymore. It's at the tip of people's fingertips on phones. We've heard of children accessing pornography in school hours or even in classes, watching it under the desk. So there's got to be
school.
Yes. A couple of instances of parents said their daughters had seen the boys gathered round a phone at the back of the class watching something. So obviously there have been suggestions that we tackle mobile phone use in schools, and that's something, but also we probably need a government approach for tackling online pornography, but we also need better education, because I think there's a failure when people are talking about consent in schools. It's very important to understand about consent. But what we are finding increasingly is that people now think that consent is the be all and end all. So if they can say, well, this person consented to this harmful activity, that somehow makes it okay. And we need to get the education out there to help people understand that you can never consent to assault. So I think unfortunately some of these messages that are very important about getting people to understand they have to have consent to have sex, they've become tangled up with an idea that you can consent to ever more extreme forms of violence within sexual relationships, and that's really shouldn't be the case. And we know that it accelerates. So we know that when people have started off doing these acts, they need increasingly extreme forms of this sort of violence in order to get aroused. And they start to view normal relationships as something boring, and girls are being shamed if they won't be in these sorts of things. So I think it's really important that we try to take out the normalization of this sort of pornography. And when schools are discussing this, we probably do need more shame around viewing such things, because I think too much has been said recently in schools about how we shouldn't make people feel ashamed of watching this stuff, but actually it's really bad.
It's awful, and it's such an important point. Got to talk more about this stuff. Maybe we will in future on this show. Susan, thank you very much for coming on. Susan Smith, co-director of For Women Scotland.